today's speaker is young Brian over here, who works for Spears, Hampton and Littlewood. Now he knows his stuff. He did a degree in archaeology at Winchester, correct?
Yes.
Yep. And he's worked his way up, like the rest of us had to work their way up in their industry, from the bottom to the top. So, shall we welcome him in the usual way?
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for turning up this morning. Obviously, the weather's a determining factor on that. You know, I could have stayed in the garden all day, but thank you very much. Yes, kindly said, I'm Brian Goodison-Blamks. I'm from Tiverton and Littlewood. We're the largest auctioneers in the southwest. We have various specialist departments, so if you haven't been to us before, then please do come and see us. You may have noticed, somebody's already probably pointed out, we sell various sorts of things. So basically, we have regular or fine sales of paintings, furniture, ceramics, glass. We also do a specialist maritime sale, specialist antiquarian book sale, a 20th century design sale, and various sales adapting to the market as it goes along. But and again, a little bit more on myself. I moved down in 2004 and joined Hampton and Littlewood, and started there, and that's when we restarted the maritime sale. It used to be Phillips. If you know Phillips from back in the day, Hampton and Littlewood took that on. Then in 2009, we merged with Sotheby Bearns, or Bearns from Torquay, very well known, that was established in 1946 in Torquay, so it's probably a very well known West Country name. We became Bearns, Hampton and Littlewood, and from there it's, everything has gone on from there. So, but a brief little, has anybody ever been to an auction before? Raise your hand, you've been to auctions. So a few of you have been to auctions. I've not seen them. Where have you been? Do any of you know the origins of auctions? The origins of auctions, I just a little brief, but the first original auctions were held in Babylonia around about 500 BC. And they were actually slave auctions, they were actually matrimonial auctions. So the auctioneer would sell off slaves or women of marriageable age, so he'd sell them all off. And then at the end of the auction, any that he was left with, he would then sell them, or ask to buy them, pay people to take them away. So if you were left at the end of the auctioneer would pay you to take the goods at the end of the day away. So, I don't think that would go down too well with modern marriages these times. But then again, so what happened after that? Auction continued. I often joke, and it doesn't always go across very well, but I work in the second oldest business in the world. The more modern auctions, or the auctions that we know today, started in the sort of 18th century, and these are started in the coffee houses in London. So this is where you have the establishment of Christie's, and again, it's people, dukes and noblemen and various people, the landed gentry, when they're selling off their furniture because of the gambling debts, or they're moving, or the house, or something happened with the family estate. So that's where the establishment of modern auction goes on today. So, but basically what we do is, part of my everyday job is to actually, we have a valuation that's open every day, people bring things into us, but we often make appointments, so we're out and about going to see people. So we're on the road most of the time going up to see people's houses. We do a lot of probate work, insurance valuation work, and it's just private property. So people phone us up and say, I no longer want my collection, or I've been left my grandfather's collection of this or whatever, so we come along and go through. But what I've done today, and I've started to pass around a couple of things, I brought sort of a few items along that the sort of things we might see when we go into a property, or things that get brought into us every day. So there's some things that look fairly obvious, and some things that look a little bit unusual. So I just thought what I'd do is I'd sort of hand them around or show them around to you and sort of give you an explanation of what they are, or the sort of things. But if you have any questions, do shout, or heckle, whatever. This is a good thing. But you'll see I'll pass around, and I'll show you another one around. So this is something that I don't know if anybody's seen anything like this at all. There's another one going around, and there's another cardboard one there. So this is the sort of thing that's often, they don't see them that often, but they do turn up at auction on a regular basis. So does anybody have a guess at what that is?
Shoehorn?
Shoehorn? Not quite. You could use it as shoehorn. It's boxwood. It's made of boxwood. It's from around about the 19th century. This one's a little bit earlier. Again, it's boxwood, and there's another one going round that you probably see. It's probably, hopefully, it's made its way around to the back. There it is. Excellent. they often puzzle me. Sometimes people come into me and say, oh yeah, I never ever use the word expert. I hate the word expert, because there's always somebody who knows more than you about something. So if you claim yourself as an expert, you can go and say, I'm an expert at this. People bring things up into us on valuation days, or I go to a property and they say, what's that? And I go, I haven't a clue. Because there's so much to learn, you know, because obviously we're seeing things like silver, ceramics, and various bits and pieces, and it comes under the sort of the umbrella of tree. So again, in the 18th and 19th century, before the establishment of ceramics, the development of ceramics, everything was used as wood or pewter, so you had wooden bowls and things. This is a useful thing, and if I did that, would that give you another clue?
Crunch. No.
No, I'd fall over if it's that short.
Top end of a crutch.
Top end of a crutch. No, in actual fact, what you can't see, you may see the one that's going around, it's got a small hole in the end there. So it's got a small hole, and this one also has a small hole, and the other one has a small hole.
Bagpipes.
So yeah, it's not quite bagpipes, is it? But in actual fact, if you put a knitting needle in there, you can hold it under your arm, you can knit with the other hand, and then you can feed the baby with this hand. So they're sort of 18th, 19th century things. They're known as goose's wings. They're fairly common things, sort of thing that's in the southwestern sort of coastline. But yes, they're known as goose's wings, and they're useful for for knitting. That's exactly what they're there for. So you can put it under your arm, knitting needle in there, and you can knit with this arm, feed the baby, or wash the baby, wash the floor, or whatever. It's a bit sexist, whatever. But yeah, so they're nice little things. This one's got a plain one. This one's got a little bit more carving and decoration. They have that sort of rural element of a sort of not quite a Welsh love spoon, but that sort of aspect to them. They're carved and decorated. And I think this one here has the initials AG on it. So that one looks a little bit more like a feather. So that's why it has the goose's wing. That's why they're referred to as goose's wings. They're a nice sort of group. These will be coming up in a sale later on this year, in July. So generally, I mean, depending on sort of the decoration quality, they can range from sort of £30, £40, £50, £60 to £80 to £100. So there's a few £100 there. But if you saw those in a house, or this is the thing, it's knowing those bits and pieces that sort of stand out that people are interested in collecting. The market's changed very much so in the 1980s, 1990s. People were buying, I mean, at the heyday of the Antiques Roadshow, with Arthur Negus, I remember watching that growing up. People were buying period properties, so people were moving into Victorian and building houses and saying, well, I'm in a Victorian house, I'm in period, I want period furniture, I want period things in it. So the market was very, very strong. I can pinpoint it to around about 1997, when, I don't know if you probably remember the IKEA advert, chuck out the chintz. Yeah, that came in. Because we had where I used to work, and where I first worked, we had a lady the year before, 2 years before, she paid probably around about £3,500 for a Georgian inlaid mahogany sideboard. And then 2 years later, she went, I'm fed up with it, I want all modern IKEA stuff. And she just put it back into auction and sold it for about £1,000. So the market just went. The market is still buoyant, it's just changed with various aspects to it. So, silver and jewellery is still very, very strong. Thanks to Donald Trump, the gold price is very, very high. So if you've got sovereigns there, sovereigns 3 years ago were about £350 each. They're now selling at auction for around £650, £700. So the gold price has gone up. So if you've got, the thing with gold is that it's the trick, isn't it? It's knowing, it's like stocks and shares, so things go up and down, but it's knowing when to sell and when to buy. If I could predict that, I'd be living on a nice private island somewhere, having all these things. But with the markets, period furniture and very early furniture is doing very, very well. Known and listed artists are doing very well. The funny thing that's doing very well inside of furniture is the 1960s Urkel, 19th Scandinavian rosewood furniture, because it meets that modern aesthetic of very close. So a lot of London studio flats, it's very, very popular. So again, we had some Danish chairs that you would look at, just upholstered armchairs, didn't look very antique, didn't look very exciting, £2,500. So unless you've got something like, but then with that you have the name sort of maker. So if you've heard of Charles and Ray Eames, designers. They're very, very famous designers from the 1950s, 1960s. And they designed the Eames chair and Eames ottoman. It's a very, very sort of stylish design item. And that's around about £8,000. It's very, very, it's interesting because having come from archaeology and seeing sort of, when I was one excavation I was on, we were working in Spain in the Knights Templar, and we were excavating, and we were digging up just examples of sort of 15th century lustreware, which then became very, very popular again. William de Morgan in the 19th century started to do the same sort of design. So everything to me just seems to be circled round and round again. So these sorts of things come round and round, and hopefully in phases this is what will happen with the markets. So you can tuck away these sort of things. If you've got any Star Wars toys, any Pokemon cards, or anything like that tucked away in attics, the first set of Pokemon cards were which is 165, which came out in the 90s. They're selling for around about £20,000. So I can see the lady that you're looking, thinking, I've got some Pokemon cards upstairs, I should pick them up. I'll tell you if you're, but the highest price, it used to be that the highest price for a toy sold at auction used to be a Star Wars figure called Boba Fett from the second film, which is around about, I think it was around about 100,000. That's recently been surpassed by, if you remember, the film's just been re-released now, the He-Man film, Masters of the Universe. The original toy from the 1980s, the Castle Grey Skull in its original box, or with all bits and pieces sealed, 146,000. And what would you rather have? Would you 146,000 on a toy, or would you rather have a nice Monet or something like that? It's really down to taste, and that's the sort of thing. So we have to adapt to the market. So we've seen it sort of change so much over the years. We sort of have to adapt and change the formats and sales to where we go. So that's why we have the various different sales. But very, very unusual things that come up at auction. We had another thing that's unusual. We had 2 years ago, a typewriter. It was an unusual typewriter, but quite a rare one that was made from, it was only made from 1874 to 1876. And again, we sold that for 23,000. So this is that's why I mentioned these things, so it's the unexpected sort of thing. So, but what I've got, cool. So, I think hopefully you've all seen this little silver jug. Nice little silver jug, isn't it? You think, oh, silver, that's nice. It's very, very good. And I don't know if you've seen the marks at the bottom. Because obviously the English hallmarking system is the oldest hallmarking system in the world. And that's why it's been established as one of the best, because obviously you have to have the lion passants on the bottom, so everything has the lion. You'll notice in other pieces, what actually happens is they'll deliberately, on silver-plated items, they make the marks look like silver marks. Because again, literacy in the 18th, 19th century wasn't very good, so people sort of think, oh, that's silver. It's very different. Silver is always soft and malleable when you squeeze it. Silver plate, quite different. I'll pass that round so you can look at that as well. I'll pass that one that way. I'll pass it. What I also like to do is nice to actually, rather than just sort of show you images and do this sort of thing, to actually see these sorts of pieces as well and handle them, because you can look in books and you can do all the research you like, but actually getting to hold these sorts of things and actually look at them is really the best way to learning around these sorts of pieces. But it's a nice little thing. So, and then if you don't know the marks, but on the bottom it's got the maker's mark, which is L & Co. It's from the late 19th century. There's a shop still in London today, so does anybody know about it? It's a sort of arts and crafts movement. Does anybody know the name that's associated with that? No, with Liberty? Liberty & Co. There you go, Liberty & Co. And what they did in the, sort of with the rise of the sort of aesthetic movement, late 80s and 1890s, they started to produce this sort of silverware that had this sort of nice Victorian period houses. Were an absolute mess. It was a mixture of all sorts of things. You would have taxidermy, you would have jardinières, you would have the aspidistra, you would have ebony furniture, you'd have mahogany furniture, you'd have tapestries, you'd have needlework, and it was a complete mismatch. So William Morris with the arts and crafts movement, and then later on with the aesthetic movement, what they did, they coordinated it all. So they went back to the work from aesthetics, but they coordinated everything. So everything started to match. And that was the first sort of modern designs or interior designs of the sort of 19th century. Then you have the arts and crafts movement, which begin with, you have the aesthetic movement, which is more Japanesque, so they have more of an oriental feel to it. Because again, I'll sort of meander off this because my brain's sort of thinking all these things. Because in 1870, Japan was opened up against the West, so there was a big sort of Japanese sort of like revival. That's why you get sort of the bamboo and those pieces. And then obviously you move on into the 20th century, and the sort of first major designs of the 20th century is the Art Deco period. And then that's where you start getting, where everything is coordinated. But this is sort of late, there's got a hallmark on there. The anchor is Birmingham, if you know your hallmarks, silver hallmarks. Obviously there's the crown, the rose for York. There's the Rougemont Castle for Exeter, which is the Three Towers. And then you also have the Panthers here for London. This is Birmingham, and you've got the mark on there which is N, so it's around about 1900. It's a nice little thing, isn't it? What would you say? An auction? 50 pounds is 50 pounds, 60 pounds, 500, 50 pounds is about right. But in actual fact, it's worthless. Really? No. Can't be sold. Do you know why it can't be sold? It's not a fake. It was originally a christening jug, a christening cup. Sorry, it's a christening cup. Exactly. It's been altered. So at some point, when cream jugs became very popular, in the 1940s, 1950s, silver was very, very popular. People collected silver, so they collected cream jugs and collected makers. So the market was very, very strong for them. So what people would do, unscrupulous people would do, they say, well, actually, I've got this old christening jug. Nobody wants those. Everybody wants cream jugs. So it's been altered, and they've cut out the rim and put the spout on. Now, technically, when that's done, that needs to go back to Goldsmiths Hall, and it needs to be re-hallmarked. Because whenever you have anything silver, you have component parts of silver. So you have a candlestick, you can take the sconces off, or you have the branches off. Each piece should be marked with the lioness or the silver mark. If it doesn't, then there's something wrong with it. It's been altered, or it's not quite right. But that's been altered. It hasn't gone back to Goldsmiths, so we can't sell that. It's illegal for us to sell that. So that just sits on our shelves as a museum piece of various bits and pieces. But when you have a look at it, it's been kind of. What they have done on this one, they've done it a little bit better than most of the others, because some of the others don't even bother to cut the rim off. So when you look in the top, you'll be able to see there's a line across the top of the spout there, which means they haven't cut the rim, because they bothered to cut the rim on this one to make it look a little bit better, but it's a christening rim. It's the wrong sort of shape. Also as well, if you have anything silver, they usually, if you put anything in there like milk or any sort of powders or anything besides just silver, the silver will react with the powders. So usually anything that's of very quality will be gold lined, because gold is impervious to powders and oils, so it doesn't react. And a quick tip there, if you've got any silver spoons or any silver plated spoons, don't put elastic bands around them, because the rubber in the elastic reacts with the sulphur in the silver and leaves tarnishes it, leaves a very, very bad black mark that you can't remove. So best thing is sellotape, really, on those. But yeah, so that's the interesting thing. We do see quite a lot of these sorts of pieces. It's just, again, it's just things we have to look out for that we go through. You know, people come in and they sort of, often when people bring things into the sale room, when we have people come in for the duty values or just for the day, they'll start unpacking things, and the stories get passed down through the family. You must look after this. This is very, very valuable. This is thing. So, but often, in fact, is when we do that, and then we have to go. I'm terribly sorry, but I'm afraid it's not saleable. So the one thing I will say is that when if anybody brings anything, it's a rule of thumb, but the more it's wrapped and the longer it takes to unwrap, the less value it's got.
Should that have two?
It should. That should have gone back to Goldsmiths, and what they should have done, they should have hallmarked the bottom, and if you send this to Goldsmiths now, what they'll actually do, they'll strike out the nice original marks, they'll put the modern marks on, and then it will also hallmark the spout as well. So that's what should have happened. So, and you can, I mean, with that it's not really worth worrying about, but if you've got a nice sort of Georgian piece that's been altered, or it's by a particular, I mean, Paul Storr is probably one of the best, silversmiths you may have heard of, maybe heard of. If you have anything by him, that's certainly worth something that's worth sort of having done. It costs about £150, so yeah, if you do have anything like that. but and what we can't do these days, there's more and more legislation coming in to antiques and collectibles and various things. So we used to be able to sell, you know, if you had the odd, you know, top of a glass bottle that broken, or if you had the odd lid, or you had the odd, you know, piece of silver that broken off or something, you could put them in a bag and you could sell it as a parcel of silver. Can't do that now. That all has to go off the goldsmith hall, be melted down, put it into a bullion and sold as a bullion. So that's the thing. So more and more sort of legislation. I pass around two spoons. Sorry.
What would be the scrap value of that? Almost nothing.
Well, scrap value, if you weighed that, it's very light, so that's probably £20–30. If it didn't have that, you know, it's Liberty, so it would be more than scrap value. So because it's got the Liberty is one of the names that people look out for. So if it didn't have that on it, it wouldn't be 20. It would probably be more like £80 to £100. So you can see, it's often with various pieces, small decorative pieces do very, very well. So that's nice thing. While you're looking at those other spoons, we want to, you can all have a good look at them. So again, we do all the various different types of sails. We do sort of maritime sails and various bits. Has anybody ever seen one of these before? Has anybody sailed? It's a Turk's head knot at the end, yeah. Anybody sail or boating? Right. This is something that, if you were in the Navy in Nelson's time, in the 17th, 18th century, would have been very, very useful for you. It's known as a seaman's rubber, or a seam rubber. So it's made of, this is walrus ivory. So it's been carved. Some of them are made of lignum, some are made of wood, you know, sort of hardwoods or ebony. This one's quite nicely carved. Somebody's actually quite good at carving has made this one. So you've got this edge at one end, and you've got the knot with the other end just for grip. But basically, if you've ever been sailing, and if you've got your, I can't say ropes and sails, I have to say sheets and lines. I got told off by a very, very, very prominent naval gentleman saying that. But it's known as a seaman's tool, or it's a seam rubber. So basically, when you're aboard ship, you know, the canvas sails are very heavy. If you've ever seen canvas or have dealt with canvas aboard ships or anything like that, very, very heavy. So this is for folding. When you fold it over, this is used to actually rub along and crease the seam. So it creases the seam, so it helps you, it's creasing the seam. And then you can actually, you get sailor's thumbs as well for the big needles that you go through. So typically sort of thing that's made, and you see quite a number of them. This one is quite a nice little one. Again, what sort of value would you say, if you've seen this sort of thing? Sort of marine ivory. You've heard, you know, scrimshaw as well, don't you? You've obviously seen scrimshaw with the sort of carved decoration. This is in the same family as that. It's another one of these sorts of things. But yeah, so it's a nice little thing. Any idea of value? 60.
50 to 80.
It's 50 to 80. Oh, no, you're a bit mean, it's the weather. It's probably going to be around about 100, 150 pounds.
That's it.
Yeah, nice little thing, because they're very collectible, it's a nice thing. Like scrimshaw, you can get scrimshaw that's sort of very, very basic, and it's worth sort of 100 to 200 pounds, or you can get very well carved scrimshaw, again, that's mostly it's the erotic things, because it's sailors aboard a ship, so what they're going to think about, they're just that can make up to sort of 15,000 to 20,000 pounds. So that's the sort of thing. But again, the Ivory Act 2018. Yeah. So the 2018 Ivory Act. You're probably all familiar with the old legislation. Used to be ivory. Anything that was predated 1946 was you could sell at auction. That's gone completely. 2018 Ivory Act came into effect. It came into effect after lockdown in 2022, and that now there's a complete ban on anything that is 100% ivory. So, and last year that also included marine ivory. So that now includes scrimshaw and all these sorts of things. There is a de minimis rule, which means that if it's less than 10% of the material used in the construction, then you have to pay a £20. It's £20, and you can have an ivory exemption license. So you'll see in lots of the catalogue now, ivory exemption, and it gives you a code. So if you have a chest of drawers at home, if you have a tea caddy, if you have a violin, or any musical instrument that has ivory in it, if it's less than 10%, you can sell it, but you have to actually apply for a license. You can apply for a museum license, That's £250. But if you don't get that granted, you don't get your £250 back. So there is, if you speak to some dealers, they're very much sort of like, well, no, you give me a brown envelope, I'll give you a piece of ivory.
Can you tell the difference between ivory and bone?
Ivory, the difference between ivory and bone. The difference, I always explained to me that ivory is teeth, it's enamel. So when you look, if you look in the mirror, I don't look in the mirror, my teeth often, it's very, very straight, and you get it very straight. Bone has very, very sort of, when you have a look, if you saw through your lamb shank, and you'll see bone is very open and porous. So with bone, you get quite a lot of black in it as well. If you have anything like tortoiseshell or anything that's resin, the other way of dealing with it, if you take an emery board, if you rub an edge and smell it, if you smell like paint thinners, cellulose, then it's plastic or resin. And the only way I can describe it, if you get that smell when you have your teeth drilled at the dentist. Yeah, it's horrible smell, isn't it? But if you have that, that's the smell like, that's something. So that's the smell you get on this ivory or bone. It's that calcium smell. Yeah. So again, nice little thing. Again, that's another piece that's gone onto our shelves from the museum.
Who wrote that act? Because they're not taking any notice of historical use.
Oh, I know, exactly.
They have like a Stradivarius worth about £40 million
Yeah.
with ivory keys.
We sold a pair of ivory vases, that size, Japanese ivory vases with enamel work on them, and they're £16,000.
But is it just that somebody, some group
Well,
saying ivory because it's not people using
yeah,
ivory?
it was very much the thing that I think it was Prince William is one of the people who was the main thing. It was very much, I'm trying to think when it was, because there's been so many elections, it was when either Boris or, but it was a year when there was a general election, where we had just before lockdown. It's very much a vote winner, ban ivory, can't sell ivory, it's horrible. But they're not taking into context the historical context. A lot of the ivory that we see and a lot of bone is a byproduct anyway from the whaling industry and that sort of thing. So, and obviously with elephants, it's a byproduct for that sort of thing. The ridiculous thing is, so the Ivory Act was pushed through as a vote winner, and they didn't think anything about it. So it's just the sort of thing. So people have collections. As I say, somebody's in 2013 spent £16,000 on a pair of vases. Overnight, their entire collection has been made worthless. So you can imagine how furious people have been. No, this is the thing with the legislation. It's one of those things. It's a minority shouting the loudest and sort of saying, "Oh, we shouldn't do this," and so on. But if you go online, you can go online and you can look up safaris. For $20,000, you can go to somewhere like I say Rhodesia, but it's in Zimbabwe now, and you can shoot an elephant for $20,000. It's ridiculous, That's the thing. So that's the sort of legislation that's coming into effect. They're now talking about adding tortoise shell and more sorts of things to this, so it's getting a little bit more. So we have to be very, very careful. But that sort of thing. So, and it's a shame. That's the way it's sort of gone.
How do you actually date ivory? Apart from the usage?
It's really down to the styles. Again, it's down to the styles and shapes. A lot of the things that a lot of things we deal with, you get to learn the common sort of shapes and styles of the period, so that's very, very useful to know. So with those, they're very, very typical sort of 19th century. You often see ivory walking canes, the same sort of thing, and so it's popular sort of that sort of period. The carving and the sort of with furniture, again, it's distinctive elements and styles. You have your Georgian style. Georgian style is nice and plain. Victorian is very, very ornate and curvy, and then you go back from the Victorian style to the aesthetic movement, which is very, very plain and sort of basic carving, and the construction as well, with these sorts of things that you tend to see. So it's knowing the sort of attributes of various bits and pieces that you get to know the sort of periods and styles. When it comes to silver and ceramics, there's a crossover because the silver often copied the ceramics sort of shapes. So you'll get a wishbone handle, you'll get a scroll handle, you'll get an oval jug or a round jug. So the ceramics of the period copied the silver, and likewise. Again, there's all various elements that come into it. And it's just knowing, again, we've done this over 30 years, you sort of get to know and can easily spot and identify these sorts of these elements that come into it. So that's the thing. But there is one book that, if you are interested, there's one book that I read many years ago, which is a very good book, and I always say this to people to, if you're interested, because it covers everything. It has a section on silver, ceramics, furniture, glass, toys and collectibles. Ignore the prices, it's out of date. But there's a book called The Miller's Guide to Understanding Antiques. I don't know if you probably all know the Millers, Judith and I can't remember the husband's name, but they've divorced now, moved on. But everyone, before pre-internet, that's everybody relied on the Miller's Guide, because it printed out all the results of everything that was sold at auction that year. So I can remember when I first started, when something would come in, when I was first home, and say, "I'm back in a minute." Yeah, there's one there that looks similar. There's a Miller's Guide. Yeah, about £50, £60. So you go through, but now it's all on the internet. I wouldn't trust the internet too much, particularly with AI and Google. I mean, I have used it, and it's sort of, I've done things where it's come up with, if you do that, it will say, yeah, that's a Persian rosewater ewer from the 15th century. And it's like, people often say to me, there won't be auctioneers in the future, they'll all be gone, just be all AI, be all computers, because you have online bidding, you have the sales broadcast live online. I think that's absolute bunkum, because the thing is, there's no substitute for experience, because, again, you could take a photograph of a Chinese vase, and it will say, yes, this is a Chinese vase worth about £15,000 to £20,000, but you turn it upside down, no, it's a 19th century copy, because in the 19th century they put the 18th century marks on the bottom, and you've got a £20, £30 vase. It's just one of those things. So the two spoons, the spoon and the fork, sorry, where are they? There they are, excellent. Somebody's honest, I like somebody who's honest, excellent, thank you.
Well, I thought, just in case.
Lovely, thank you. No, hopefully you've all seen these.
I'm sorry. They ended up here.
They're not there, so a spoon and a fork. The fork, right.
Sorry, can we have a look at the spoon?
Oh, you can have a look at the spoon, right, okay. I'll come down here, actually I'll come down in the middle of this one, it's probably a bit easier. So there's a spoon there, so. America's the worst place to take ivory. It is, because the thing is with legislation, what actually happened when the legislation came in? France, you can hear it from me, but off the channel, no, they're not completely worth it. It's still sold in France. The ivory ban is just in England. The Americans are quite strong on the ivory ban as well. Sorry. Yeah, the Americans are quite strong with the ivory ban, because we actually sold a teapot. If we sold a teapot, cream jug, and a sugar basin, the teapot had an ivory finial on, and ivory insulators on the handle. Got sent to America, it got stopped at customs. They smashed the ivory off, and then sent it back. And they smashed, and again, the nice Lorenzo figures, lovely Art Deco figures of ballerinas with ivory hands and ivory faces. They smash the hands off of one of those, because they just go, oh, it's ivory. That's it. Because it has to be shipped to America through certain ports and legislations. I believe you can take it to America if it's inheritance, but you can't do it as a sort of trade. So if you've inherited it, you can go through. So we've got the spoon and the fork. Now if I say to you that the spoon is silver, it's hallmarked, it's got curving. Have you ever said, so Victorians were a great one for berry spoons, for serving berries and fruits and berries, and berry spoons. So they're very, very popular. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And the fork, it's just a silver-plated fork. It has got a special badge on it. Yeah, it's got an interesting badge on it. It has. The fork, if you have a look at the end of the fork, you can see it's got a very small mark on there, and it's got a little penguin, and it says British Antarctic Expedition, Terra Nova, RYS. Scott, yeah. Captain Scott. So yeah. So when they went on the expedition, this is what they did. When they went on expedition, they took wonderful things. They took the full dinner services, they took teapots, they took mustard pots, they took spoons, everything. It wasn't, not just your sort of plastic camping hamper, things like that. They had the full Monty, they took everything. So that one's on there. So that's a nice little thing. You can see it's got the mark on there. So it's a nice little piece of history. You know, obviously, this is the Terra Nova was Scott's last expedition. So it was when he actually found, it was him, Oates and Evans and Dr. Wilson, I think it was as well, in the tent, just short of one-ton depot. So there's quite a few of these sorts of things get put around. In I'm trying to think, just before lockdown, we went to see, my colleague and I went to a property down in Plymouth, and they said, well, my great uncle's left me this, my great aunt's left me this, it's from her brother. He sailed and he actually went, he was the ship's carpenter aboard the Terra Nova. And so she said, we've got this chest in the garage, is it worth anything? So we took all this stuff out of the chest of drawers and we took, well, there's a few maps in there. We rolled this map up, my colleague in the book department and I looked at this map and we stood there for a while and they're saying, what's wrong with this? Is it anything? This is the map that was aboard the Terra Nova where they plotted his dates through the pack ice, where they put one-ton depot and where they actually found Scott. So Scott stood over this map and marked all these dates on here. So this is history. So and her husband said, oh, I better shut the garage door and I cut the grass. So you know, you see this sort of thing, it's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This is history. So, and there was all sorts of personal things. You can, if you have a look at our website, the catalogue should still be online if you go through search results and things. But we sold a collection of various pieces there, from personal effects, from all sorts of things. And funny enough, his name was Freddie Davis, and he comes from Plymouth. And one of the navigators who was on Terra Nova comes from Ulster. So there's a really strong connection. So we do see quite a lot of these sorts of things. So yeah, so that's a nice little fork. And you know, who knows? Scott, Oates, Wilson could have actually used that fork. So you know, it's one of those sorts of things. So I mean, and that fork is coming up for auction in June. Estimate of £400 to £600. We've sold them. Single forks, £400 to £600. We've sold them for £1,000 before. It's just it has that connection. It's not silver, it's silver plated, but it has that mark on it. So that's the sort of thing. So that could potentially make £1,000 at auction. So
do you have to have the person present that's going to buy that, or do you do a lot of it online? You know, is it?
Our sales, so we have traditional auctions, so we have live sales, and not an online auction, it's live broadcast. So when I'm on the rostrum, we have webcams, so there's 3 platforms, so the screen's flashing in front of me saying, you know, bid is here in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or wherever, so it goes through. And then we still have people in the room, traditionally, and then we still have telephone bids and people who commission bids as well. It can get a bit frantic because all of a sudden, you know, you start the lot and then the screens are flashing up because we have now Bairns Hampton on the Littlewood platform, we have the Sarah platform, and you have Easy Live. Probably you may have used Easy Live, some of you. And then, so across those 3 platforms, you can have 2, 4, 6, you can have 6, 8, 10 people all bidding at once. Then you've got people in the room who are bidding and waving at you, and then you've got telephones that are shouting at you as well. So trying to think where it all goes. And what also happens as well is with the bidding platforms, they work slightly differently. So one will start at, say, 300, 350, 380, 400. While you're doing that, you turn around and the automatic bidding on the other one is at 1200, 1300. So for another, auctioneering's changed. So it's changed quite interestingly because, you know, before none of that, there was no internet bidding or anything like that. So it was all in the room. So now it's all sort of flashing around. So people are more and more used to buying online. So the culture's changed. People do a lot of shopping online and do that sort of thing. So it's a bonus because we reach more people. But also there's a downside to it, the fact that people treat auctions almost like commercial, like they're buying retail. So one of the things is when people bring up and say, I won a lot in your auction, it's like, no, you bid for a lot in the auction. Because people have that eBay mentality, they think, and you know, oh, I've won it. No, you've just put the highest price in, that's the thing. I think that element of why I've won something at auction comes from the fact that people sit there on a Sunday evening and they're watching the countdown and they're sort of waiting for it. 1 second, that's it, I got my bid in. People do that with the sales as well, because I'll raise the hammer And as I bring the hammer down, I know that they're sitting at home going, if I press the button when he brings the hammer down, then I win the lot. No, you don't, because if it does that, I'll just say with the hammer or no, too slow. I got annoyed last week, I must say, because the bidding was very, very slow on the internet. They were the hammer was coming down, the bid was coming in, no, too slow, we move on. So that caused a few problems that I've got to deal with. Anyway, auctions like that. So that's one of the things. The other spoon, the spoon, was here, right? Okay, that's the spoon. So nice Victorian decoration to it. Lovely little thing, isn't it? And it's got the hallmarks on the back. Oh, you can't know. That's because the decoration's gone over the top. Victoria's too long. But what they've actually done is they've ruined this. This spoon is originally, it dates from around about 1680, 1700. It's a dog-nosed spoon.
Oh, what?
Dog-nosed spoon. Referred to as dog-nosed spoons, that shape. And it would have been very plain and nice, and it would have been a nice little plain piece. And it's got the marks on there. The marks on there can't quite see because they're worn, but they are very early marks on there. As I say, my colleague in the silver department says about 1690, 1680, 1690, 1700. And then the Victorians have gone, oh, it's a boring spoon, isn't it? It's got no decoration on it whatsoever. Let's make it pretty. And there we go. And they do that to furniture as well. You often see very plain Georgian furniture, oak furniture, that would have been very plain and panelled and very sort of, and then the Victorians go, oh, that's very boring. Let's get our penknives out and carve some decoration in. So again, it's the recycling aspect, I suppose. That's the big thing, you know. It's the whole thing, you know. Again, auctioneering and antiques is probably the biggest recycling thing that there is. You know. There was I went to a meeting once, and they were saying, do you know, if you buy a diamond ring at auction, you're saving 120,000 hours carbon footprint compared to buying the ring, you know, brand new. Because if you go to a jeweller and it's a brand new ring, you've got to take in all the aspects of all the mining aspects to it and all that sort of thing. There's a whole. But yeah, so sorry. I said, how long should you talk for? I said, well, I can go on for ages actually. But yeah, it's a Georgian spoon. It's a Georgian spoon, so it's a dog-nosed spoon. And the spoon itself, had it not had that decoration on it, spoon collectors probably were paid £200–300 for it. With that decoration, it's £100–150. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So again, we see various sorts of things you can see. So there's silver and sort of tree and various other bits and pieces. There's unusual things, and I'll pass that one round. Let's just so ceramics as well. So if you know your sort of history of ceramics, that a lot of people, it's very much sort of in Europe. It was very much sort of terracotta, earthenware, and basically stonewares that we used. And then in China, obviously they developed porcelains. And then when China was discovered by the West, it was this wonderful new porcelain. It's lovely, it's light, and it's fragile, it's delicate, and it's very exquisite sort of work. So there was an alchemist in Germany called Botger, and basically they locked him away in a tower around about 1720, 1740, locked him away in a tower and said, you're an alchemist, you can't come out until you develop porcelain. Anyway, but he managed, and I think the secret that they had with porcelain was that it was the kaolin or calf bone that they put into the mix that gave it that very, very fine body. So you'll get hard paste porcelain, soft paste porcelains, and those sort of things. So that was, and then from there, that's when that developed in Germany. So that's where you get your Meissen. So that's why Meissen is one of the sort of high-end porcelain. And then Worcester copied it, and Worcester came up with it, and Worcester in England. So you get Meissen and Worcester, two names that are still very, very good today, and the market for very, very early pieces is very, very good. I'm afraid your Worcester tea services and Meissen tea services, you know, they're not really sort of that much anymore. The Royal Dalton ones, and nobody ever uses a full dinner service anymore. If you go to a restaurant, you either get a wooden chopping board or a piece of slate. You don't get a proper plate, you know. Long for the days where you can go back to a proper restaurant and have, you know, well, I mean, you probably can still, but you probably have a full layout with all your various forks and plates and things. What I'm passing around now is it's something that's, again, it's decorative. This is the sort of thing that's, it's that unusual decorative thing that's known. It's a piece of palissy ware. It's palissy, which is sort of Portuguese, around that sort of region, Mediterranean. And it's a terracotta ware, and you probably might recognise how it's been made, because it's been handmade. Yeah, if you want to pass it back, it's been handmade. Oh, I'll show you. It's been handmade, and it's one of the things. It's one of the methods I remember doing in school with pottery, is that you get a lump of clay and you get a sieve and you push it through. Great fun, and then you scrape it off and you put it on, and it's painted for things. I brought the fish ones, because the fish ones are quite a little bit unusual. Normally, they're insects, so they're usually sort of scorpions, snakes, lizards, and things. Yes, exactly. I have clients who they come along and they buy them, and they go, "Oh, could you wrap it for me? I can't touch it, can't touch it." There's snakes and snails and bugs and insects on them. They hate them. But the fish one's not so bad. Nice little sort of glaze, Majonica glaze to it. Majonica is another one you sort of tend to see. It's got the mark at the bottom. It's just something. Palissy is the English way. Majonica, you get Dalton Majonica, and you get sort of various other pieces as well. But it's a nice sort of decoration to it. So it's an interesting little thing. But again, yeah. That's a fish aren't so bad, but the insects people really don't like because they're very, very realistic on those. But yeah, so again, it's something that, you know, traditionally you sort of sort of antiques. When you sort of think of antiques, you think of Meissen, Sèvres, Worcester. You think, oh, very nice decorative, pretty plates and things like that. And so I suppose I don't know if you saw it at the house, who would say, oh, that's interesting. Who would like that? No, nobody. Well, yeah, one person. Yeah, it's not. Again, it's fashion, isn't it? It's that sort of thing that somebody's not quite that interested in. So, but that's probably £200. You know, because collectors like these sorts of things. Unusual. So if it was slightly larger, they'd make £1,500, £2,000. So it's just a nice little thing. Again, it's something that, you know, people tend to sort of think, oh, I don't like that. It's ugly, and I'll throw it away. My wife always says, I don't watch Antiques Roadshow that much because it's Busman's holiday and my colleague is on it. I spend all week watching it, talking to him. But no, my colleague Christian's on it. Whenever I watch it with my wife looks at, that's ugly, that's got to be worth a lot of money. Oh, I like that, what's it worth? Oh, it's not worth anything. That's ugly, that's ugly, it's not worth a lot of money. And then there's, I don't know, I'm rambling on, but I'll carry on if. Carry on. I don't often get told that, so I will. And then it's very, very interesting. And sort of the things that we see, it's a fascinating job because it's different every day. You know, you'll go out and you'll see different things. Like yesterday I was in North Devon and saw some modern pieces. After this, I'm off to a chap said it's a manor house that I've never heard of, and so we're going to go and see it. He's got all his furniture there, so all bits and pieces. But it's interesting. You can have all sorts of things. Just literally half a mile up the road, we had a collection. It was a small property on Moorhays, but he was the gentleman who ran the bike shop in Tiverton for many, many years.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and he was an absolute passionate collector of militaria, and he turned his house into a museum. I mean, he probably had about 500 medals. He had 150 World War II steel helmets. You know, and all those sorts of things. And you know, that was a collection of stuff that we sold. Obviously, he passed away, but we sold his collection, and that made 100,000. And you know, so whenever we go somewhere, we can turn up and we don't know what we're doing. You know, we can turn up and be, you know, again, sadly, it's the case where we turn up and say, thank you very much, it's very, very decorative, but I'm afraid in the current market there's no value. Or you could go and say, this is fantastic, this is absolutely, you know, amazing. There's one thing I don't have it involved, but a lot of people sort of think that, you know, when you're going out and you're out to an auctioneer, you're going along to lovely stately homes and you're going around, you know, so, you know, like being down to Hydrock Place, and I've done insurance valuations in there and quite a number of places, and you go to these lovely stately homes or private homes, and it's all very nice period furniture, it's all lovely and clean, and you know, or often than not, are going into properties or barns on things, you know, where actually, you know, the roof's caved in, the boxes are damp, there's rats' nests inside bits and pieces. One chap said to me, "Oh, don't mind that. That's just the squirrels in the attic," and you know, all sorts of things. But and we get filthy covered with various bits and pieces. But that's the sort of thing you enjoy. Again, we did a property down in near Kingsbridge. And again, the family had moved into the house in the 1920s. Been a family house for years and years and years. They'd moved out, and but everything had just been left and put into one big room, and the books and everything. From that property, we took out a book, which is a very unusual book called Richard Hakluyt's Voyages and Discoveries of the English-Speaking People. £365,000 for one book. For one, two bonds. And from that same property, we had a set of 12 chairs that made £20,000. I took my colleague there, and I opened up this trunk. And I said, "Look at that, that's fantastic. It's nice, just smelly old mothbally costume." So this is interesting, this is nice stuff. It was 18th century military overcoats, military uniforms and coats, and they were wool. And that one trunk, that sort of size, £20,000. There was a very rare jacket in there. There was actually a George III royal housecoat. Only 18 of them were ever made, because you had to be a member of the royal household to wear them. It was a military family, so there's a royal connection there. And yeah, I don't know. There's a chap called Matthew Pinsent on Instagram. I hope you've ever seen him. Wonderful chap. He dresses in period costume. So, you know, we're sort of sitting there, looking at my window, so there's a chap walked by there. He's got a white top hat and a cravat and breeches, and he's just walked into the sale room. And he does. He literally goes around all the time wearing period costumes, and he designs and does some things for films. So he came along and he was interested in that. But yeah, so all sorts of things. This is something that's you may have sort of seen or come through again. May have seen or sort of heard of it. But have you heard of sort of Bilston enamel? You've probably heard of Halcyon Days enamels, have you? Yeah. So this is a little sort of enamel patch box or enamel box. They were very, very popular again in the 17th century for ladies. They had their enamel patch boxes, and the patch boxes, they had the little heart shapes on them, which would they put over a blemish or a beauty spot, that sort of thing. And they're sort of sorrow. They have, again, they have various sort of elements to them. This one is quite a large one, and it's lined inside and hand painted. The decoration on that. It's hand-painted decoration, rather than later on. With a lot of the decoration, it's always hand-painted. Then you get into 1820, 1830, with a lot of the ceramics that then start to become transfer printed. So the transfers, like you have on the Airfix kits, you float them off and float them on, and they stick, and then they're glazed over. But this is a nice sort of enamel box. It's got a little bit of damage to it, but it's been restored. So nice little thing. Bilston enamel is probably the best well-known English ones. You also get German enamels, and they can be from sort of, this is sort of middle range. It's quite nice work, but you can get very, very, very high-end work that's, you know, very, very detailed. If you go to Grosvenor, you can see with the Antiques Fair at Grosvenor, you can see examples that are very, very detailed. They usually have Italianate or Grand Tour scenes on them. So you have the Palazios and various bits and pieces, and they can make up to sort of £20,000–30,000. This one is it's a nice pretty one. Again, it's sort of 200 to 300 per auction. They do sometimes have makers marks on, which is always easy, because when people bring things in and they sort of turn and go, yeah, that's so and so and so and so, and they go, how do you know that? Straight away. It's at the bottom. Easy thing. And they go, people come and say, I've got this plate, it's 1795. We go, no, sorry, that's the establishment date of the factory. This is actually from 1989, and it's part of dinner service. But yeah, so there's a nice little patch box, some pieces. So some things. So so I'll carry on a little bit. This is one thing that I can never get my head around. Art.
Rather naughty. Big naughty.
Right, looks naughtier
No,
that
that's
way,
bad.
yeah. Painting is one of those areas, it's not quite, my background is, when I started as a porter and sort of lifting and shifting, and then become sort of a general valuer. So a general valuer, what we would do, we'd have sales every month. We'd have one day would be a specialist sale, so it would be silver followed by the normal furniture and ceramics, then it would be, the next month it would be paintings, and the next month it would be jewellery. So my background is a sort of a general valuer, so and I've done that for a long time. I find that helps obviously because some people just specialise in particular areas, so you know, and that's the thing, you know, that's where the knowledge goes up. So I'm at the bottom of the pyramid, if you like. I just go up and see everything, and then the next step over, somebody sees paintings, next step up. So there's a, but paintings and art is very, very subjective. You know, and again, the market's very sort of fickle and changes quite a lot. You know, a lot of people like your traditional oils and canvas, and you know sort of well, pre-Raphaelites and example pieces. Then you have people who specialise in watercolours. You have people who specialise in West Country watercolours by particular artists and those sort of things. It's a difficult thing. It's very subjective. You know, there is sort of. I've read recently that the definition of what art is has changed, because now they're sort of considering that you have your sort of classical art, but then you have to have the art as it's interpreted by the viewer. So it's very much now the case that art is significant because of the emotional response it gives you. Then you've got blue chip art, which basically is just people saying, well, I've paid £50,000 for that, so in 10 years' time it's going to be worth £150,000 and sort of investments. And so there's all sorts of things. This is actually, there's a big market now in sort of the 20th century, because as we move on now, because does anybody know, I should probably start with the technical term for it, the technical definition of an antique? 100 years old from the day you're speaking. So, you know, where are we now? We're 2026, so anything from 1926, beginning of the year, is an antique. According to the Royal Mail, anything over 25 is an antique. Believe me, I know, because I've tried posting things to the Royal Mail. And how old is it? It's an antique. So they'll probably change the definition of that soon. So, yeah, so people, obviously, they're very sort of traditional Victorian. Again, it was that fashion. Again, in the 80s, 90s, people buying Victorian and period properties. I want Victorian paintings. I want nice sort of, you know, Victorian chocolate box cottage scene, garden scenes of, you know, watercolours. I want this, I want. But then it changed again, and people went, no, actually, now I want more modern. I want, you know, the 1950s, 1940s, 1950s post-modern sort of thing. You'll get things, you know, you'll get a local sort of thing. I mean, obviously in the West Country, obviously Robert Lenkovich, he was very, very well known. I'd never heard of him, I must confess, when I moved out, Robert Lenkovich. When I looked at his work, Robert Lenkovich. I can appreciate it, it's work, there's technical work that goes into it, but it's one of those things, it's subjective, isn't it? You know, you either like the work or you don't. You know, you could say Robert Lenkovich, when they had the sale in 2006 of his studio, they were making 150, 200,000. That bubble has sort of burst, and they're hardly making anything at the moment. You know, the market's flopped because that sort of has gone. But then, you know, we've had Damien Hirst. We had a painting, a circular painting by Damien Hirst that made 50,000. We've had Tracy Emmons, again in 20th century sales. But we had a lovely painting, I remember it was a lovely painting of Malta, the harbour of Malta. That was 50,000. You know, they're very, very different sort of prices in different markets. This is by Roger Hilton. As it says on the back, there you go. Roger Hilton. And Roger Hilton, he was again, he's mid-20th century, 1940s, 1950s. And he was an artist that did sort of figural studies, and he originally started off with the more figural sort of studies in traditional senses. But then what he decided to do, he decided to go to more abstract and sort of line drawings and various bits and pieces. And they were always sort of female studies and nude studies in sort of various positions of pieces, and they became more abstract. He's very well known for a particular series called Oi Oi Oi, which is an unusual name. But this is one of his sort of line drawings. Again, it's the process behind the actual art. Again, you know, when you see sort of Mondrian or people say, oh, Jackson Pollock is just as splashes of paint. It's the thought process behind the concept of actually what it does. So this is a drawing, obviously from my new study, but it's a continuous single line. So that's why, you know, when you look at it, it's not just a doodle that somebody's done while they're on the telephone. You know, it's actually a continuous unbroken line. So that's the sort of concept behind that. And that's why it becomes very popular. Again, you know, it's not so much that it's one of those things that I can appreciate it. You know, I understand it and I appreciate it. But I want that hanging on the wall at home. With my wife divorced, if I said I'd paid £400 to £600 for it. But yeah, that's coming up later on the year. It's about £400 to £600. So, yeah. I've just got a couple more things really. There's always one with the phone on, isn't there? Yeah. And this is the cameraman. I mentioned earlier about sort of the changes in markets and the sort of you know, downturns, upturns of various sorts of things and various sorts of bits and pieces. One of the markets that sort of is still very buoyant and well, it's actually coming up again. It's quite interesting. It's quite an interesting market. Is scientific instruments. Scientific instruments and sort of well, maritime instruments, obviously. Various bits and pieces, but scientific instruments as well. So you know, we've had down in Budley, there was a property down there. It belonged to a doctor, and the lady's late brother was a doctor. So not only is it medical school, she said, I think there's a skeleton around somewhere. And in the garage, in a box, in a Hoover box, was a full-size skeleton. And it was a human skeleton, it was from cadaver, because again, we had it from the 1950s. And again, full-size skeleton. I mean, if you know anybody who's a medical student or going through doing that at the moment, to buy a full-size fiberglass or resin one, they're very, very expensive. So this is a full-size skeleton, and it made £2,000. Just so, and again, this sort of thing that's doing very well. So yeah, so we also had a very early Georgian surgeon's kit, because surgery was one of those things that it developed very, very rapidly during the Napoleonic Wars, because you know we've got gunshots and musket shots and all sorts of wounds, and so it was more like butchery really, with that sort of thing. So when we often get kits with Lister knives and scalpels and various tourniquets. And one of my favourite things, unfortunately I don't have one, but I can often get one, they call them trepanning saws. Do you know trepanning?
Yeah.
Yeah, so trepanning saws. Again, for all your ailments, go to the doc. I mean, if you went down to Kennedy Place today and or Castle Practice and said, oh, do you know what, I've got a terribly bad knee. You know, oh, hang on a second, I'll just drill a hole in the top of your head. I think some people do need a hole drilling in the head. But this is a little thing. It's a little. I bought this one because it's just interesting. It's a little drum sextant. So you've often sort of seen, you know, on all the parts of the Caribbean films where they stand there with a big sextant and you know they're doing it. Well, this is a much smaller version. This is about, again, it's around sort of 1900, around the First World War period. So it's a little drum sextant. The telescope goes in there. You've got your little vernier on there. So you can use that for your sightings and various bits and pieces. It's interesting that during the First World War, you know, officers, even when you're an officer, you were commissioned into the army. You would go up to London to arm the army and navy, and you'd actually just go, right, I'll have one of those, and you'd buy all the kit from there. If you ever see anything like this, if it has a broad arrow on, then it's military issue. So it's War Department issue. Usually has War Department, or sometimes you'll see AM for Air Ministry, those sorts of bits and pieces. So you issue. So that's when they started to issue things. So later, post First World War, just Second World War. If anybody was issued with a nice Rolex watch when they signed up, yeah, I had a chap who turned up and he said, "This is my Rolex watch. I was given it in 1971 when I joined the army." And I've had it with me ever since, and it's been on. I've been here, I've been there, I've been went to the Falklands and came back. So then my son wants to deposit on the house, and the chap round the corner said, I'll give you £8,000 for it, just want to double check. So no, this is a military issue Rolex, it's got all your numbers on. Military issue Rolex is a £50,000 to £60,000. So he said, again, maybe my son can get a job. It's a nice little, instruments, a nice little thing. Did just look like a tin of corned beef. Beef dripping, I'm sorry you all saw that, beef dripping. I don't know if you did, but that's one of the sorts of more unusual things. But that's a nice little bit, again, £200 to £300. It was in this is the original leather case that it comes in. Sometimes they're marked with their date marks from 1914, 1918 from the First World War period, but collectors like it. It's lovely original condition. It's got the chap's name on there. CR. De La Salle. Don't know the name, but we can research. More and more sort of research is available online now because more and more things get listed online. So well, that's a nice thing. And then I'll take this one until almost last because let's just see if I get a reaction from this one. I can't pass this one around, I'm afraid. Yeah, I'll be checking at the door. Yeah. So one of the growing markets and one of the strongest markets is jewellery and gold. Again, it's sort of timeless really. It's sort of the various bits and pieces that come into us. Again, the market's high at the moment because of the gold price, but also as well, you know, it's always the sort of things that jewellery is good. It's a nice little thing. I mean, this is something that just, again, when often we go on appointments with sort of people say to us, well, I've got various bits and pieces and, you know, I've got some jewellery or whatever. But, you know, some people, because we have, we're open every day for people just to bring things in. And so what happens is people just walk in through the door. Yeah, but it's all gardens and flowers. Yeah. So this was a gentleman came in through the door on a Monday. I'm the duty valuer on a Monday, so it's my job to run up down the stairs when people come in. I don't know how they do it on reception. I go up, make a cup of tea, and just as I'm about to go, they go, "There's somebody in reception for you." Go way down, thank you very much. Get all the way back up again. There's something in reception, so it's like good exercise. But yeah, this came in. This was the gentleman. It was his late mother's. She sort of she had it when she was its 21st birthday present. It's in the original case. There you go. It was originally from my Royal Warrant, Page, King and Page, Plymouth. And it's a lovely little thing. I think that'll be 18 karat gold, and it's gem set with various. You can see you've got sapphires, diamonds, opals, and all different coloured stones in there. It's a lovely little thing. And again, you know, it's just decorative. You'll get some Victorian jewellery and some period jewellery that's really not quite there. You'll get big diamond star brooches that are set with really nice big old cut stones. They're just really worth the stone with. If you get a nice, the thing that's very popular, the Victorians like their insects brooches. So you get brooches, gem set diamonds of butterflies and spiders and insects. And the weird thing again, like the plates, they like insects and the macabre. They do very, very well. The other thing that does very well in terms of jewellery is memento mori pieces. So again, from Tiverton, the lady I went to see, she said, I've got a few pieces of jewellery, is there anything there? There was a very nice memento mori from around about 1720 that we put into auction, and that sold over the internet to a lady in America who got them for 7,500. So, you know, that was just the one ring. This is lovely little thing. This will be coming up later on in the year, so this is just a very nice, lovely little thing. It's very, very decorative. With jewellery, again, open market to retail and insurance valuation. Jewellery has the highest appreciation from retail. So if you saw anything in the window, and again, this is probably going to make around about 2,000–3,000 at auction, maybe a little bit more. I hope it makes more. I could see that potentially making 5. because it's just a very, very attractive piece. But we have to be realistic, you know, if we put it in at 5,000, people go, well, I would have paid that, and then I've got commission on top. But if it's in at sort of 2,000 to 3,000, people think, oh, you know, that's not too reasonable. And then they get carried away, or they get involved with the momentum, so they could go, all right, no, I really like that, or their wives say, no, yeah, well, I've actually seen that. I've actually seen a gentleman in the sale room standing there bidding, and so he's bidding answer, and then he got outbid. And his wife literally went. So he went, it's one of those things. I'm not saying that ladies, you all do it, but this was a particular lady. She really wanted this piece of jewellery, but it was just, you couldn't write things like this. All auctioneers could tell you loads and loads of stories and you know, endless hours, but yeah, it was the way she just sort of went, Helen was a real kick in the ribs. But yeah, so this is, so if this made £5,000 an auction, if you had to go and have this made again, the jeweller is going to charge you to source the stones, source the gold, make hours of work, because they're all cut stones. So this, if it made 5,000, you're probably looking at about 15 to 20,000 for insurance. So yeah, that's why I'm afraid I can't hand it now. But yes, a lot of other things, but yeah, so that's a nice sort of thing. That's a good question. Yeah?
We've got a rose gold, a 9-carat rose gold placed in ISO 20 grams.
Yeah.
What's best in, I mean, it's never used. Are we supposed to sell it as a scrap gold?
Well, yeah, because at the moment, unfortunately, same with gold and silver, because the scrap prices are so high, people, you know, and you will probably get a better price. At auction, the thing with auction, selling at auction, is that the buyers will actually, the dealers will actually discount on their hammer price, the 30% commission that they have to pay on the hammer price, because obviously it's a service and auctioneers have to do it. But if you go to a gold bullion place or a jeweler, they may give you a slightly higher price. The prices vary on a regular basis, so it's one of the things. But again, if it's decorative and it's a nice chain, it's rotorless chain, you know, if you're, I'm biased as an auctioneer, obviously, because I would say that if you brought it to auction, you're actually appealing to a broader market. If you're going to a single dealer, you're relying on their honesty. You know, for them to say to you, oh well, you know, it's 20 grams, gold prices, I'll give you. So for 9-carat, we're probably doing it around about 35 pounds a gram. But the price is slightly higher than
Rose gold.
yeah, it's rose gold. Yeah, no, rose gold's nice, £20 gold's good. So there's a little bit more. It's not just the scrap price. You have to then consider, you know, it's like this sort of jug, you know, that being like, it's probably only 20, 30 pounds scrap, but because it's Liberty, it's got nice age to it, it's probably, you know, it would be 100, 150 pounds. Again, with jewellery, it's not just the scrap price, it's the fact that is it attractive or is it what they call a breaker? You know, a big star brooch, nobody wants to wear, so they'll break that up and use the stones, and they'll just pay the scrap price. But again, if you get, we had, last week, I had, in the sale, I had 1970s, 1980s Cartier, you know, used Cartier watch on a pendant that we put in at gold price at sort of, I think it was sort of 1,500 to 2,000, made £17,000 because it was just a rare thing. They don't come up that often. So again, you know, if it's a nice design or if it's a, again, you look out for makers. I mean, particularly with Scandinavian York Jensen jewellery, you know, that's very, very sort of popular. So there's certain elements and factors that, you know, outweigh the fact that it's just basically the gold price. So that's the sort of thing.
Let me just ask a question. Art Nouveau silver toast slice.
Yeah.
It's very delicate, and one of the things is broken. If I had that repaired, would it value the?
It would. Well,
would it be better left?
It would and it wouldn't. I mean, if you're keeping it, I would say have it repaired.
Yeah.
Because you're keeping it. If you were selling it, I would say don't bother, because it's going to cost you however much, £50, £100 to have it repaired. That cost is not going to make that, because it's a silver Art Nouveau toast, right? They have a particular price bracket. It's not like it's going to make it suddenly unique into the thousands, unless it was owned by William Morrison, you can prove that we've got letters in the letters in the works. So,
I know who made it.
you know who made it?
Yes, her name was Winifred Hunt, and she traded a slave.
Oh,
and
wait.
She was part of the arts and crafts.
Well, all right, yeah, so it's nice. I mean, Hester Bateman is another silversmith you may know, very, very popular, very, very well known, the Bateman family. So yes, with everything, there's elements, so various bits and pieces. So hopefully, I think that's everything. The one thing I was going to quickly show you, which I always enjoy, is, I don't know where I found this, but I found this and I acquired it. It's a little small, weird piece of glass. So it's just a small piece of glass. But have you heard of uranium glass? Do you know the definite test for uranium glass? Ultraviolet light. It's like magic, isn't it? I'm terrible on the roster, but I keep on because I'm obviously certain generation grant things and something like so. And then we have we have some younger members of staff, and they operate the computer system. So if I say things like, "No, that's magic," they look at me like. But yeah, uranium glass. The other thing, ultraviolet torch is one of the tools of the trade. Really, it's an absolute must. Because if you have one, you'll sometimes see on paintings. You can see that's where you'll see the people with ultraviolet lights. You can see the restoration because it's different. And again, with ceramics, it shows up the restoration as well. So that's why we sort of often see people do that sort of thing. But yeah, you'll see the various pieces on there. So I think I've rambled on for quite a lot. I've run out of things to do, but I can probably just go from there. But hopefully it's been informative. I mean, if you do have any questions, I've got sort of, yep.
I was interested to know your connection to deep sea diving.
Oh, about. Oh, right, okay, yeah. In 2016, yes, in 2016, well, what the story is, I came down in 2004. Christopher Hampton, some of you probably know Christopher Hampton. He lives in locally, and he's been with Phillips for forever and a day. And so they said to me, right, we used to have maritime sales. Can you start doing the maritime sales? So I did it and we re-established the maritime sale in the Southwest after about a 25-year gap. So now we do it. We're the only auctioneers. There's one other auctioneers, I won't name, but they're in London. We're the only auctioneers in the Southwest that has a dedicated maritime sale. And in 2016, I was contacted by a gentleman called Anthony Pardo. Anthony Pardo and his wife, Yvonne, they had the world's 4th largest private collection of diving helmets in the world. And sadly, he wasn't very terribly well, so he decided to sell his collection off. So that was a collection of 160 diving helmets, 40 pumps, big pumps, hand pumps, plus knives, diving boots, diving weights, sort of chest weights, belt weights, anything you can think of diving related, so diving canvas suits, something like that. So that was a sale I did in 2016, and that was a white glove sale. We sold every lot, and that sale made £500,000. So I've had sort of affinity and connection, and one of the chaps who was who used to work for Anthony Pardo a few years ago said, "Oh, how are you?" And sort of met up with him again. He said, "Actually, I make these belts, I make these belt buckles," because he used to do the restoration. So I said, "Oh, I quite like that, I'll have one of those." So that's why I have it. I've never been. I'd love to do it, but having put the helmets on, they're quite claustrophobic. Very, very claustrophobic. But yeah, 160, the heaviest 160 diving helmets, and they all weigh about 30, 40 kilograms, and then you've got the chest weights as well, and then you have the boots. Obviously, because they're very, very heavy, because when you get in the water, you have negative buoyancy. So, it's lightweight and this sort of thing. So, but there were some very interesting helmets there, and that brought in. We had a lady who flew in from California. We had a gentleman who flew in from Israel. We had a chap from South Africa. We had a chap from Belgium who got in his truck, got onto Eurostar, arrived in London, drove down to Exeter, bid in the sale, put all the stuff in the back of his truck, said, "Bye-bye, I've got to catch the Eurostar." Drove back and caught the Eurostar and went back to Belgium. But yeah, so that's my connection with that. So. But yeah, so hopefully it's sort of give you a general insight and sort of an idea of what we're looking for with auctioneering, and insight of what we'll have to do on a daily basis. So basically, it's quite a nice job really. I get to, when the weather's good, I get to drive around in the car, listen to music with the windows open, going from appointment to appointment, going to see some nice things, occasionally giving some bad news and saying, I'm sorry very much, but you know, your great-great-grandmother has completely told you the wrong end of the stick. It's not so-and-so and so-and-so, it's by, you know, it's a copy of things, you know, I'm terribly sorry about. And also, but I mean, if you are ever in Exeter, you know, I've got some calendars here, or you can have a look at our website, do come along, you can even watch the sales live. I mean, as I said, we just had, I don't know, you probably saw last week, we had the Charlie Watts estate. Charlie Watts, drummer of the Rolling Stones. He lived in North Devon with his wife Shirley Watts. They've lived there for many, many years. We had his estate, and that was a very, very good sale. It was, again, over 400,000 in total. We had a silver and jewellery sale, that's again 400,000 in total. So we sell various things. You know, it can be from the sort of the lower end of the range, so the 50s to 100s, and then we get up to the sort of high end as well. And then from Oakhampton, we had a small vase that the lady had. It had been given to left her by her aunt in the 1990s in a shoebox. She lived in, and her aunt lived in Bristol, and had this vase, and so this lady said, well, I know, I've just left it in the shoebox and put it on the side there. So, and we looked at it and that's really, really nice. And so we found the history of it. And her aunt had actually married a gentleman and went to China in the early 20th century. Her husband sadly died, so she came back, but she brought back all these oriental pieces. And she had this vase on her sideboard in the entrance hall in Bristol for years and years and years. And when she died, this lady cleared her aunt's house, put this vase in a shoebox, and it was left there again. And then this is early 2000s, or 2010. She brought it into us and we said, well, that's very, very nice. And we put it in, we said, that's a nice one, it's £20,000 to £30,000. So that's nice. My daughter can have a deposit for a house with that. So we put it into auction and it went to 20,000, it went to 40,000, then it went to 50,000, then it went to 100,000, then it went to 150,000, then it went to 200,000. And when it got to 200,000, I could see this young lady, this woman bought a daughter, and her daughter was thinking, well, actually, that's the deposit gone, I think 4 bedrooms now. Well, you can see her mind ticking over, it's like, oh, actually, a flat, no, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Got to 300,000, oh, kind of garden. 400,000, oh, maybe a semi-detached. Anyway, it got to £460,000. So, yeah, so 460,000. So we sell either end. It's always good. It was quite nice because in that type of sale as well, with some of the buyers, they're always very funny because they're very, very competitive. So you put like 20,000, they go 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. So the bidding goes quite quickly. That's one of the things. So there you go. Excellent. Well, hopefully that's been informative, and thank you for coming along this morning.